Overspent this month? Here's exactly what you can do next.
Here's the scenario. It's almost the end of the month. You sit down to review your spending and you realize that you have spent far more than you intended to spend. Now, you know, numbers don't lie. So at that moment, you feel a little sick to your stomach and more than a little panicked. But in this video, we're going to walk through 8 super simple steps. And we take these steps every single time that this happens to us. They help us to feel like we're more in control. And most importantly, it helps us to get back on track really quickly. If you don't know us, I'm Hope.
And I'm Larry.
This is Under the Median, where practical frugality meets real life.
Hope and I have had plenty of months where we've had to take a closer look at our finances and recalibrate what we were doing. It's not uncommon. So this is a scenario that we're quite familiar with. Number 1, get the real numbers. You want to know exactly what you're doing. So you want to take a very close look at your budget, look at each category, how much are you spending from each category, how much money is coming in that you have to work with.
After just looking at the basic budget numbers, you're going to hone in on the areas that you definitely know that you overspend. You want to make sure that you understand the full extent of the overspending. Get the numbers and put them down on paper. Did you overspend by $50, $100, $500? That range makes a huge difference in the steps that you're going to take next. But make sure that you know the extent of what has happened before you move on to the next step.
Now that you have the numbers right in front of you, you're going to figure out why did you go over in certain areas.
You're going to look for patterns. Is this a once-only thing that happened? Let's just say that you had 4 dinner parties in 1 month. That's a lot of dinner parties, but it's happened to us, all right? So that would explain why your grocery budget was strained to overbreaking and overspending. With that knowledge, you can say, all right, this is a one-off deal. I'm not having 4 dinner parties next month because guess what? I hosted 4 times this month, and that means all of our friends, they get to host next month. It's probably not going to happen again. Now, if this is something that you look at and you think, I don't know. I feel like this is something that has changed. For instance, our water bill at the beginning of 2025, it went up 40% just for the purposes of even having the account with the water company. We knew it was coming, but boy, it hurt when it actually hit. That first bill in 2025, I went, whoa. But it did help me to look at it and know, wait a minute, this is a permanent change. I had to look at the bill and figure out how much did that bill go up? And how much of that bill do I personally have control over? What percentage of that bill is within my ability to change? And that's why you have to know the exact numbers.
So in other words, by looking for patterns, you're going to be able to execute something that you can do in order to compensate.
Now, here's another clue that we'll give you. If we go over 1 month, we tend to sort of balance it out by going under the next month to see if we can rebalance that budget category. But if something has gone over by 3 months or more, we give it 1 quarter before we say, this is a pattern that looks like it's kind of here to stay.
Yes.
And then we figure out what that next step is, which we'll talk about next. What do you do when you see something and you're like, this is what it is and what can I do to change it?
So the third thing that you need to do is activate your budget SOP, and that's your standard operating procedure. You should have a procedure that you can put in place that will automatically go to work in that area and implement some changes that will be good for you.
Now, we have given our budget plan a name, our SOP. We have given it the name PIE because we really like acronyms. I'm going to tell you what the word PIE means. The P in PIE is for plan. The minute that we start going over in a budget category, we're like, all right, we're going to plan. What steps are we going to take to make changes to change that number in the next 30 days? We write it down on paper. We plan the whole thing out, and then we go to the I, which is implement it. Because you can plan all day long on paper, but unless you're going to track how you are implementing those plans, you have no way of knowing whether what you did worked or didn't work, or whether you even did what you said you were going to do. So you need to make sure that you're implementing and tracking what it is that you are doing. And the E in PIE is for evaluate. In 30 days, on the bottom of that paper, it says, when are we going to evaluate what we said that we would do? In 30 days. We're going to look at it and say, What worked? What didn't work? What worked super well? What didn't work as well? What are we going to carry over and do the following 30 days? And what are we going to scrap? And what new ideas are we going to bring in to try to achieve the savings that we felt that we needed to achieve?
So the pie plan gives you a very specific way to thoroughly look at your situation and correct where correction needs to be put in.
If you're intrigued by the pie plan and you want the, sort of a step-by-step walkthrough of it, along with some worksheets you can use, I'm going to make sure that the pie plan is available, and it will be in the description of the video.
Step 4, now especially if you're getting toward the end of the month, you want to rework the remaining values that are in your budget. So you want to make some adjustments in order to correct for where you've gone over.
How much money is coming in for the rest of the month? What bills absolutely must be paid for the rest of the month? You also really want to look very carefully when you're doing this reworking process. You want to look at any discretionary spending.
Yeah. There also might be some areas in your budget that you don't need to be putting the money into that you are. You can take that money and apply it toward the other areas that you're having difficulty with.
We've had to do it many times. Here's where the problem comes in. If you, and once again, hear me out, 3 months, that's what you're looking at. If you are 3 months in a row moving that money around in order to fund those categories that you're going over in, that indicates that's your warning light, that 3-month time period. That lets you know this is a problem area because it's a consistent habit and this is something that needs to be addressed.
Number 5, use the 10% challenge. This is something that Hope and I implemented years and years ago when we needed to save a great deal of money in a very short time. Our budget looked like it was completely full and it didn't look like we could really do much with it. But as we got to analyzing it very carefully, we found that we could take 10% off of that whole budget by going over specific categories and removing a little bit of money out of each one. We came up with a total of 10%, and 10% over time can make a big difference.
Let's just say, for instance, you think, no, I don't want 10% off of my whole budget. I just want 10% off these categories I'm going over in. You can use the exact same strategy that we just talked about to do individual categories. Let's say you're going over in groceries, you're going over in gasoline for your car, and you're going over in utilities. 3 really common areas that people go over budget in. You're going to line those up on your worksheet or just on a piece of paper and say the goal is shave 10% off of this. You set a timer for 20 minutes. This is why this is a fun exercise, because it takes us 20 minutes. We know it's not going to take us 3 hours and two different pans of cookie bars to go through this experience, right? So it's 20 minutes. You're going to set your timer for 20 minutes. You're going to be Googling on your phone or your computer ways to drop my grocery bill. You're going to look at those lists and you're going to say, wait a minute, I feel like we're not doing this effectively enough. That goes on your list of ways you're going to drop that grocery budget by 10%. And then once again, what are you going to do? You're going to track it, you're going to implement it, and then you're going to reevaluate in 30 days. At the bottom of that 10% worksheet, you're always going to have, when am I going to look at this again and reevaluate it? 30 days. And see whether what you did worked. But we have found this method to be really sort of an interesting thing. And you know what? By the way, guys, when you're Googling, I want to remind you that we do have a website. I know that most of you are familiar with us from YouTube, but we have a website that has lots and lots and lots of articles that are related to what we talk about on these videos. And I'm going to make sure you'll find a link in the description of the video. It's underthemedian.com.
Number 6, create a what-if plan if the price of an item goes way up. So like eggs have really gone up a lot. Gas has fluctuated quite a bit in price. But what if gas goes up 40%? What can you do differently in your driving habits to reduce the amount that you're driving? You might even think about getting an economy car if you're ready to replace a car. There's all kinds of different things you can do in different areas. You can cook things that don't use eggs if eggs are going way up. There's always some kind of a plan you can put into effect when things are starting to go up to higher prices.
Now, one of the things you'll notice is we just gave you three different tools. That's 4 fingers. This is 3 fingers. 3 different tools that you can use effectively. These are different ways to tackle the exact same problem. You can use the pie method. You can use that method in conjunction with the what if plan, in conjunction with your 10% challenge.
Yeah.
These are all different methodologies that we have come up with to look at the numbers and say, what can we do to lower those numbers? What are we willing to do in order to make change that will cause us to be able to spend less?
Before we move on, if you're looking for ways to reduce your expenses, Hope has put together a guide that gives you step-by-step instructions on how to reduce those expenses so you can save more money. We'll leave a link in the description of this video.
And by the way, that guide is free.
How about that?
Here's the next step. Tighten your belt temporarily. We're going to give you 3 different examples of ways to do this, and we have used all 3 of them. When you're talking about tightening your belt, what you're looking for is that quick win.
Yeah.
You're looking for that influx within 30 days to your savings and checking account so that you can handle these overages that you've overspent in these budget categories. One of the ways that we do this is we have consistently, honesty is always our policy. We are really struggling with our own grocery bill these days. One of the things that I do every single time I start to overspend the grocery budget, and this works like a charm, is to grab an envelope, put that $200 cash in that envelope at the first of the month, buy groceries only out of that envelope. When the envelope is empty, my spending is done. It makes me so much more aware of how quickly that money is going. It's amazing.
The second way to tighten your belt over a short-term amount of time is to do a no-spend challenge. And this disciplines you to really cut out any unnecessary spending. It also might help you to reevaluate what you are spending your money on and whether you need to continue to be spending money in that particular area.
And the third way you can do it is just simply through a daily check-in. Write everything down, enter it into your budget. Make sure that you have accounted for all the money that you've spent in every 24-hour period. Believe it or not, once you get behind on that practice, it is so easy to let things start to slide and to think, oh, I don't know, I'm behind 2 months now, or 2 weeks, I should say. 2 months is a long time to be behind. I haven't put it down for 2 weeks. It's fine. I kind of know what I'm spending. Regardless of whether you think you know what you're spending, when this has happened to us, every single time I went, oh, shoot, I forgot I spent XYZ amount of money on XYZ product. And all of a sudden, you'll be over in a couple of different budget categories because you just didn't track it on a regular basis.
The goal of this procedure is simple. You want to stop widening the gap. You want to be able to come in and fix it before it gets worse.
Here's the 8th thing that you can do, and that is to reset your routine. Oftentimes we spend money just because it's a habit that we've gotten into. You know our habit? You'll have to tell me what yours is in the comment section. Friday nights, toughest night of the week for us. It's been a long week. We're tired. And inevitably, one of us will look at the other and go, you know what? A little bit of vegan junk food would go a long way for me tonight, but it's expensive.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we have learned is I have to leave because I teach some classes on Fridays. I've got to leave Friday morning with something in that crock pot. Because when I walk back in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I better smell supper in my own home in the crock pot, or we are in really big trouble. Or just even sometimes it's something I'll have in the refrigerator, and I'll say, before I walk out the door, I'll say, I know what supper is. I've got it in the refrigerator, or I've got it in the freezer. Planning ahead, this is gold when you are trying to reset your routine. Fixing those routines and changing up those habits, it'll help a lot.
In addition to what Hope has just told you, we also do margin reviews. And that's where we look at a category and we look very carefully at how much money we're spending and how much we need in there and decide, is there margin in this category that we can lower the amount that we're putting into it so we can apply that amount to the other categories that need our help.
We are giving you a lot of tools in this video.
Yes.
One of the other things that we've done recently is that we have used that margin review and we have gone through each area of our budget and figured out how we can optimize our savings in every single area of our budget. We went through our phone bill, we went through our grocery bill, we went through our utility bills. And not only that, we made videos about each of those areas and what we are doing in order to optimize our savings in each of those areas. And we even covered some of the areas for you that feel like they're very, very fixed, but there are actually some ways that you can lower those monthly expenses. Now, what I did was I put all of those videos into a playlist, and I put the playlist right over there for you to watch next.